The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello everyone, and welcome to September's edition of ChemCareers from the Royal Society of Chemistry. Now, our subject this time is all about careers in process chemistry and technology. And I have two excellent guests on the line with me today. Dr. Andrew Byrne, who is a Senior Process Development Research Scientist at APC Limited. Would you like to say hello, Andrew?
Good afternoon, everyone. My name's Andrew, and I'm a Senior Process Development Research Scientist at APC Limited in Dublin, Ireland.
Okay, lovely. And we'll be hearing more from you a little bit later. And we also have Laura Coward on the line, who is a technical manager for Town Talk Polish Company. So would you like to say hello, Laura?
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone.
Okay, thanks very much. Now, my name's Julie Franklin. I'm one of the Career and Professional Development Advisors at the Royal Society of Chemistry. And if you are a Royal Society of Chemistry member, there are lots of services that we can offer you. And I'll tell you a little bit more about that at the end of the broadcast. But on to our main subject for today then. So although the subject today is careers in process chemistry and technology, that title actually covers a wide range of roles and companies and sectors. And it's true to say that many process chemistry roles will actually not be in strictly chemistry related companies. So there's a lot to talk about. And our agenda today really is to find out a little bit more about the variety of careers in process chemistry and technology, to understand more about the varieties of companies and roles in the sector, to get some inside information about the technical and transferable skills that are needed to have a successful career in the sector, to talk a little bit about how our guests got into the sector and whether you can take anything from their experiences to help you. We're going to look at career progression opportunities, support from the MRSC, things that we might be able to do to help you if you're interested in getting into this sector. And also, we're going to talk a little bit about what you can actually do to help yourself. So we're going to start out finding a bit more about roles and employers, and we're going to start with our two guests here because they both work for very different kinds of companies, but I guess a lot of what they do in terms of technical and transferable skills is going to be the same. So Laura, could we come to you first and ask you a little bit about your role and your route in, and whether you intended to go into process chemistry in the first place?
Certainly. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Laura Coward, and I'm the technical manager at a company called Town Talk Polish, and we're based up in Bolton. Town Talk Polish Company, it's a very small family-run business. We're what we call an SME, small medium enterprise. It was established in 1895, so quite a long history behind the company. And I think the original story starts, and you can find out the information on our website, but the story starts back in around the 1890s, where an inventive gentleman used a way of utilizing the cotton from the cotton mills of the area and the soft water to come up with an impregnated polishing cloth for polishing the Victorian silver of the time. Apparently these polishing cloths were the talk of the town, and hence the start of the Town Talk Polish Company. Where we are now is that we're manufacturers of kind of very niche, premium, high-end cleaning products. The main specialties are around jewelry cleaning, precious metal cleaning. We've got cleaning products for gold and for silver, a few metal cleaners for brass, copper, stainless steel. And then around the 1980s, the company started expanding further into household. And since then, the range has expanded quite significantly, and we've got things such as washing up liquids, waxes for treating wooden furniture, surface sprays, ironing sprays, you name it, there's probably a product we make for it. It's quite a diverse range of products that we've got now. As I say, it was around 125 years we've been around now, and this year we're actually celebrating the anniversary of 125 years. We're doing that with a brand new design. You can see on the image below, this is the new design and what the new products are going to be looking like. So we've got a nice big brand relaunch, and we were also privileged enough last year to be awarded the Royal Warrant. So that'll be starting to appear on some of the products as well. Believe it or not, some of our polishing products are used down in Buckingham Palace, which is something quite. It's quite a small, self-sufficient company. So we've got around 45 employees. And it's the split is there's a handful of us in the office, kind of in sales, purchasing, export and design, but the majority actually work in the factory and on the packing lines. So a good 30 or so people work on the production lines. But inside and the things that we can do, we've got a department that prints our own cartons. We can print our own pots with designs and brands. We still impregnate all the polishing cloth in-house. We've got a sewing room that can then turn those polishing cloths into mittens and into bags and into a whole host of other products, which very much sets us up for not only producing under the Town Talk brand, but we do a lot of own-label products as well. We can take someone's design, we can talk to a jeweler or a high street store and say, well, if you want this, you can have this polish in your own label, and we have the capability in-house to do all that as well. As far as the company's remit, we're about 70% of what we manufacture actually goes overseas and gets exported. The UK isn't actually our biggest market, and we export to places such as Japan, Australia and Canada, and I think at last count it was over 50 countries we've sent products to. In terms of my specific role, so I'm the technical manager, and to be honest, what it basically means is anything even slightly technical lands on my desk. When I joined the company, I was literally the only chemist and only person with a chemistry background, only person with a technical background. So it's quite an interesting role because there's only 6 of us who are managers, and there's only me that looks after the chemistry. I've now taken on a technician, which is fantastic, and our responsibility is for anything that's basically inside the bottle. How we describe it, and what you tend to find when you work in a small company in an SME, is that we wear many hats. And talk to anyone and they'll tell you about the many hats concept, and it just means that because there's so few of you, you just have to roll your hands up, and if there's something there and it needs doing and you can do it, you just pick it up and run with it. So on the slide, what you'll see is kind of a brief snapshot of the many areas that I myself am involved in and that I run and that I look after. And it starts from things such as the R&D and the lab side of it and the development of new products, through existing product development when we've got problems with raw materials or when we want to make products better. I've taken up now and spent quite a lot of my time on the regulatory side and on product safety and looking at labelling. But every day is different, and at some point I'll be doing a whole host of stuff. So whether it be looking at the artwork, making sure it's correct, looking at the claims support side, or even dealing specifically and directly with customers. It's a very varied role, and you get to do a lot of different tasks, and then that gives you a lot of scope for development as well. Next slide, please. In terms of myself and my background and how I ended up in this particular role, there's a slide here and it shows you briefly kind of where I've been over the last few years and what I've been doing. I didn't set out really I didn't kind of finish school and go, oh, right, yes, I'm going to be a process chemist. That is what I'm going to do. It really wasn't like that at all. I had a love of chemistry. I've always loved chemistry. It was my favourite subject growing up. It was probably helped by my dad being a chemistry teacher. And we did have our own little shed, which was our lab, and we used to do little experiments. And so I always had that interest. And because I loved it so much, it made sense for me that's what I was going to do as a degree. I did a 4-year MChem degree with a year in industry. And so I did have a year where I was working at a company called Arch Chemicals, and then came back to uni for my final year, where you're working in a research lab in academia. And when you graduate, you kind of come out and go, right, I've got a decision to make here. What do I do? Shall I stay in academia or shall I go into industry? For me personally, I felt industry was more where I'd be comfortable, more where I wanted to be. There were things around it that I really enjoyed on my year in industry. I liked the kind of faster nature of the projects and how it worked. I enjoyed seeing that the things I was working on, where they were being used and their end application and how you saw them in the market, and what the purpose was, and enjoyed that. And in terms of academia, I a love of all sorts, and I couldn't really decide where I wanted to specialise. So yeah, we left uni and started applying for whatever jobs were around at the time. My decision was slightly hastened by a boyfriend at the time who panicked and said we needed jobs and money. However, we're now married with 2 children, so it wasn't all that bad a decision. After that, I'd say in terms of where I've ended up, I've kind of, wouldn't say I've taken a typical career path. I've not kind of gone, right, this is what I want to be, this is what I'm going to focus on, these are the companies I'm going to apply for. It was really just kind of taking roles what were available at the time, and I've moved jobs for numerous different reasons over the years. And I'd say what has happened initially was that I found myself stumbling into the world of formulation and formulating products. It's great that there's so many actives about, but it's then what I love about formulation is it's how are you going to take that, how are you going to deliver it, and how are you going to make it perform for the job that it needs to do. And I've done that in many forms. So I started off with some experience at AstraZeneca, where you're working in a massive company and you're just one of the tiniest cogs, and that was looking at parenteral formulations, so pharmaceutical formulations that needed delivering to patients, and how you got that active ingredient actually into the person's body, into where it needed to be. And then into the likes of PZ Cussons, where I was working on some really well-known brands, Imperial Leather, Original Source, and manufacturing the more everyday products. And that's kind of where I've then ended up, kind of, and it's the thing that I love. It's the chemistry of the everyday. It's seeing those products all around us and knowing that there's someone somewhere in a lab's worked out exactly how that works and how to do it. And that still to this day fascinates me. And yeah, and that's kind of where I've ended up today. I specifically ended up at Town Talk, unfortunately through redundancy. My previous company had a major takeover, and I found myself being made redundant. But since taking that role, I'd say I've never really looked back. It's been fascinating. It's been exciting. There's been so much to it.
Okay, thanks very much. So that's a very interesting story, and that's a really good point about these kinds of jobs. You do see a product, right through from its very early phases to seeing it, people actually using it, seeing it on sale in supermarkets and specialist shops and all of that sort of thing. So if that's the kind of thing that appeals to you, then this sort of career could be attractive. So thank you very much for that, Laura. We're going to move to Andrew now, because Andrew has some differences and some similarities in career paths. So Andrew, would you like to tell us a little bit about yourself and your company and how you got into this role?
No problem. So my name's Andrew, and I'm a senior scientist at APC Limited, and we're based in Dublin, Ireland. So APC is a CRO, or a contract research organisation, and we're based in Ireland, and we employ about 140 people. We partner with large pharmaceutical and biopharmaceutical companies all over the world to accelerate the delivery of their medicines to the market, and I suppose ultimately onwards towards the patient. So just the graphic on the screen, we've about 140 people on site, and we've worked on over 200 medicines at the moment. We cover a wide range of modalities, so from small molecule to large molecule, analytical, chemistry, continuous processing, high potency. One thing probably to highlight to everyone, and it's something that was new to me a couple of years ago as well, is that scientific discovery of an API is really only like a fraction of the process that leads to the development of a new medicine. And it actually takes like teams of scientists, engineers, biologists to overcome the technical challenges that are presented when bringing a chemical from a small round bottom flask in your lab to a mass-produced medicine. Through a synergy of kind of chemistry, biology, engineering in APC, we enable rapid feasibility. So that's that proof of concept work, route scouting. Can we make this down to process definition, where you're getting kind of a more defined way of making your medicine, and then through to characterization. So that's the phase where you were filing for approval with your relevant authorities. And so we can add value to our partners, so whether that be pharmaceutical or biopharmaceutical, to accelerate the development, minimizing their risk and designing a robust and scalable unit operation. In terms of my role, so I am a senior scientist. What does that mean? I am involved in project technical leadership. So whether that be scoping, planning, or execution of a wide range of kind of pharmaceutical projects within cross-functional teams, and we are providing R&D and engineering support to our partners, and a load of the kind of projects that I've been involved in are covered amongst these kind of 4 main points, and that's batch and flow chemistry, whether that's design, feasibility, or in fact development of an existing process. Particle engineering, I suppose we as chemists, we often think of the reactions that means making our API, but really there are a number of steps after that where you have to purify it, work it up, and get it to the state where you can bring it forward for tableting. And I've just actually taken a snapshot of Achieve, which is the synthetics workflow that we have in APC, and we break down the individual unit ops and we kind of work towards defined workflows within each of our categories. So we've our chemistry, we've our intermediate workup, distillations, particle engineering, so that's your crystallization, filtration and drying, which is key to ensuring the quality of your API, and all the way towards formulation. In terms of, we have a lot of process analytical technology in-house. So these are these PAT or probes, which you see here on the right-hand side, which really is what is different for us in terms of other organizations with chemists. PAT allows you to accelerate this development, whether it's using an FBRM to track particle count, or whether something's precipitating, FTIR for tracking concentration, or PVM, it's an inline microscope. I suppose one of the elements that I really like about my role is the mentoring and technical upskilling of colleagues and junior staff members as well. So for me to share and give back to the company and also to other colleagues, I find is quite rewarding. To touch off my background, I graduated with a Bachelor of Science in Industrial and Pharmaceutical Chemistry from the University of Limerick, PhD in Organic Pharmaceutical Chemistry from Trinity College Dublin, and I suppose I was extremely fortunate to get a chance to do some postgraduate courses in project management and statistics over my time as well. And just on the next slide, we can see that right after my PhD, I jumped straight into APC, but there was a kind of a fuzzy bit there in the middle, circa 2014, 2015, where I think that kind of crisis came at the point of writing my PhD, where I was really trying to figure out what I really wanted to do with my career. And at that point, I kind of made the decision to sit back and really put a lot of research into potential career paths that were open to me. At that point, I was obsessed with repurposing organic molecules for the treatment of anti-cancer, and I'm still really, really interested in that. But I suppose diversification at that point for me was really important, because I found that there were other areas in chemistry that I was quite interested in. I had noticed that APC was an indigenous company that was growing rapidly at the time, and I spotted an advert. I didn't know an awful lot about them, and I did some reading into their company, the ethos and the research background, and this is something I would advise everybody to do before they actually apply to a job at a company. When I started, I suppose there was 38 people. Now we've over 140. I didn't know at the time that I specifically wanted to go into process chemistry, but I knew I really wanted to continue to learn new techniques, develop the key transferable skills, and continue to do some research in some way. And I suppose just based on the type of work that happens in APC, this is enabled for me to use that kind of toolbox of skills that I developed over my academic background. Over the period I've been at APC, I've picked up experience in route scouting, scale up, which is something obviously the largest I had done before was maybe 500 mils in a round bottom flask. So it's great to see a product go from maybe a mil proof of concept in our labs up to 10,000 litres in a plant, and get that feedback to see if your process has worked. I picked up particle engineering, which crystallization, which is actually, it's so important, but it's something that was very, very different to me at the time. And flow chemistry, which I would highly recommend anybody to dip into. But it's great then to work with these companies just developing the medicines, whether that be phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, or even marketed drugs to come back for a bit of troubleshooting. I think that pretty much covers my background.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks, Andrew. And again, a different sector, but again, that satisfaction of being a product from a very small beginning to something which, in your case, is going to turn into something that might well enhance people's lives, save lives even. You can see the attractions of this kind of role. It's seeing something through from a very small beginning to something that is going to be really useful for people. So thank you very much for that. Another thing that I'd just like to pick up on what you said there, Andrew, is, you were very proactive about going out, finding out about the company before you applied, and that's certainly something that the careers team, me in my role as a careers specialist, would definitely advise people to do. I think Andrew did exactly the right thing. It allows you to understand more about the company, to make better applications, and to come over as much more credible if you're invited for interview, which Andrew obviously did. And his role has developed. Roles do develop, because you go into a role doesn't mean to say that role is going to be the same forever. You have to look at, and you do have some control over how your role develops too. So, there's a lot there in Andrew's story that I think we can all take and use. So I'm going to ask our panel a few questions now from their own experience. And really, I expect a lot of people listening are interested in what would you say the key skills are to make a success in this type of role, and what would employers in this sector look for? I wonder if our guests could give us an insight into the skills, technical and transferable, that you use on a daily basis. And can I ask Andrew that first, please?
Yeah, no problem at all. I suppose one thing that the most important point that I want to convey today is that we need to acknowledge our weaknesses, but you don't have to accept them. So one thing that I particularly worked on over my time at APC is communication skills, both written and oral. And in order to be a good leader and an effective team member, you have to have or develop good written and oral communication skills. At the end of the day, your scientific outputs, no matter how good they are, have to be clearly communicated in a way that's relatable to the target audience, and that might not necessarily be a technical audience. In terms of it, maybe a non-scientific audience, so you have to give level-adjusted non-scientific communication where necessary, and I think that's one of the biggest learnings that I have got in my time in APC. Teamwork, I suppose, as well. Be open and honest and communicate with your team. You've got to embrace and encourage a difference in opinion, because if you plan together and define the roles within the team, it makes everybody's life easier. Time management, while it may seem like a cliche as well, it definitely reduces stress in the workplace. If you're working within a team and you learn how to prioritize your work, define what work packages you're going to take each, breaking into smaller bits of work, spread it over your week, it's important. But what's more important as well is to communicate that and share it with your team members. There's no point in you having a plan if it's not communicated with your team members. And I suppose then problem-solving skills, probably self-explanatory in terms of process chemist. I really enjoy a good technical challenge where you're forced to learn or adapt. And I think it's important, and I picked it up kind of probably off my PhD supervisor, Professor Mary Megan. You have to have a sense of adventure and enjoy your work with that problem solving. And I think that's very important, to apply yourself in a way that's not only, addressing your technical problem, but that's rewarding for you, that you kind of make it a journey more so than a roadblock. And probably, I suppose, work ethic, the way you apply yourself in a positive manner in your workplace, that's really going to impress any employer, no matter what industry, no matter. It's a really transferable skill, probably the key one for me.
Okay, that's really interesting, and it's important there that clearly your technical skills are important, or you wouldn't even be considered for the role. But to actually be successful in a role like this, you need a whole host of other transferable skills as well, which Andrew's highlighted. And I wonder, Laura, would you agree with what Andrew said, and can you bring any more skills, technical or transferable, to our attention?
Yeah, I entirely agree. I mean, there's some, in terms of communication, yes, that's key. I mean, for me especially, I work in a company where I am the only technical person, and how I have to explain things to my colleagues, being able to kind of do it in a way that doesn't overwhelm them, is really important. For me, the technical side is important. if you're going to do formulation chemistry, you do need to understand the basics. It's not a case of the number of people who think when you've got a mixture in a bottle that, well, if you're going to change it, you can just take one thing out and put something in. It just doesn't work that way. And then that leads you into where I see a key transferable skill is being able to see the bigger picture. If you're going to make one little change, you have to then see what the knock-on effect is much further down the line, and how it affects the whole process. And that can be from a formulation perspective. So kind of if you've got a new formula and you've reformulated, it's not just a case of being in the lab going, well, there you go, it's great, it does this, it's amazing, it's the best cleaner you've ever had. If you then don't factor in parts of manufacture, how you're going to scale it up, what your labeling is going to be like, you know, you might not ever see that product get to that end point. And so it's really important to be able to see the bigger picture. The other thing for me is around, tenacity and being self-motivated. In all the roles I've done, the way I've developed is through my own ability to go, do you know what, I'm going to take that, I'm really going to run with it, I'm really going to get stuck in. The number of things that land on my desk that I have to deal with, and I just look at them at times and go, I genuinely don't know how I'm going to do this. This looks too hard. And seems too difficult, and it would be very easy to just push it back and go, do you know what, I can't do that. I don't get that luxury where I work. It's kind of, I have to do it, and so being able to kind of go, do you know what, I'm not going to let this phase me, I'm just going to break it down and just start a little bit at a time and see if I can get my teeth into it and sort it out. And the number of times I surprise myself, because you know what, I can do it. But that takes real self-motivation, and it really takes stickability and having that bit of tenacity to kind of say, no, I am going to see it through, I'm going to stick with it, and we are going to get there. And the more you do it, you tend to find it builds that bit more resilience as well, is that you kind of get used to it, and the things that used to phase you don't anymore. And then, the obvious problem solving. I think anything in process is just about a lot of little problems that just need a new solution. And just like Andrew, I really enjoy that as well.
Thanks very much, Laura. I mean, what we say to people as careers advisors with the RSC is that your career isn't just the job that you're doing at the moment. And I think we've heard from both of our speakers today that your career is really a lifelong learning journey. If you're going to make a success of it, you have to be prepared to learn all the time. As Laura says, you really do need those qualities of tenacity and not giving up if it's not an easy answer, not something that leaps out at you straight away. But all of these things are great. And of course, you can log these as professional development, you know, either in your own system, or if you're an RSC member, we have a system that you can use to do that. And again, if you're interested in knowing more about that, then I'll tell you how to get in touch with the careers team at the end of this broadcast. So thanks both very much for that. I'm going to ask now, what do you enjoy the most about your job? And I'm going to ask that question to Laura first.
Yeah, that's an easy one. The diversity. Absolutely no 2 days are the same. Every day is entirely different. I'm very rarely presented with the same 2 challenges. There's always something new to learn, always a new problem to solve, always a new idea to try, or a different way of doing something. I'll go in one morning, I'll be in with our export team working on how we send something to Saudi Arabia, and by the afternoon I could be in the lab making up some new samples, or even on production, sleeves rolled up, mixing a big batch of something. I think the thing I really enjoy is that I get to be involved in the whole process from start to finish, and I get experience and involved with every single part of the business, whether it be sales, export, marketing, design, and so it's never boring, it's never dull, and the days do just tend to go by.
That's great. And of course, that commercial awareness is another skill that we haven't mentioned specifically, but I would now. You know, that is definitely an employability skill. So those of you listening, you know, any kind of commercial awareness that you have, either from your company, or if this appeals to you, if this sounds like you, you know, try to get experience of that. Try to find out more about it, even if it's not part of your role. As Laura says, you know, her role is very wide, but it's maybe easier for her to do that. But we can all, you know, if you want to help yourself and you're interested in this more SME, small company type role, there is more that you can find out about it. So Andrew, what do you enjoy most about your job?
Well, I suppose the field of process chemistry, it's ever evolving, and it allows continued learning and growth, particularly in my skill set, whether that's both technical and soft skills. I suppose in the way we operate at APC, it gives me the opportunity to simultaneously be technically challenged while innovating my field and allowing me to diversify a little bit. So in particular, I'm helping out some of the guys commercially at work just to give that bit of technical support. And I suppose one thing I find quite rewarding is to give back through teaching and mentoring of some of the new and younger staff. It's that variety as well, and I suppose I completely agree with Laura. It's that opportunity to be quite broad in a technical setting that excites me. And I suppose as well, being part of quite a young company for the last 5 years within our focus has allowed me to almost feel empowered to shape the direction of the chemistry function, the way it's portrayed commercially, and the way chemistry research is carried out within the organisation.
Yeah, thanks very much for that. Yeah, and again, again that idea that roles do evolve. Because you apply and get one specific role, it doesn't mean to say that that's what that role will always be. And if you have particular interests in the commercial side of the business and that sort of thing, and then maybe considering process chemistry in a smaller sort of organisation would be right for you. And I hope you've got some hints and tips now from two people who've already made a great success in this sector. I'm going to ask now about specific challenges that might be associated with careers in process chemistry, because some of you might be thinking, yes, this is all very well, it sounds great, but what do I need to be aware of? So, Andrew, I'm going to ask you first. Do you think there are any specific challenges associated with careers in process chemistry?
A few, I suppose. For me, I found that continuing professional development in the field of process chemistry was really broad. I mean, like, if you go on LinkedIn and you subscribe to any number of feeds, you'll see that there are a lot of different webinars available in process development, process chemistry, and it takes on different meanings to different people, I suppose. The fields that it may interest me could be totally different to the goals and the focus of the company, and sometimes they are. But it's about striking or finding that compromise with your manager and with what is a commercial need in your company, where you develop your skills relative to your role, but also the company goals. It is hard to strike that balance, and it is challenging, but awareness of it is really important, because there's no point in going off and getting a lot of really, really technical CPD, but in an area that your company doesn't work in. So it's about striking that balance. Make sure and cover those transferable skills as well. These are the ones that are definitely going to travel with you from role to role, and it's important that you kind of build them, but also apply them in your day-to-day kind of working life. I suppose I keep a CPD log. I worked with Julie, and I categorize the CPD as I do it. So I kind of, very, very metrically kind of, put different CPD into different boxes, but also then I kind of challenge myself as to where I apply it. I suppose as well, chemistry doesn't always behave. And, from our postgraduate work, we're often conditioned to believe that your technical outputs somehow reflect on yourself, or your self-worth. And I really just wanted to communicate as well that make sure you've got a good work-life boundary, and that whether chemistry is behaving or not in work, that it is not an indication of your personal life, your self-image. I suppose that was one of the things that I originally studied, because your PhD is quite personal. So it's about understanding that as you move into your professional life, that you have to kind of almost make a boundary between that and your self-image. I suppose that's my two main points on specific challenges.
Right, that's great. Thank you, Andrew. And again, it's interesting to hear that you keep that continuing professional development log, and we can, in our team, we can help other members to do that if you're interested. I think what it also does is, if you look back at your own professional development log, on a maybe 3 monthly, 4 monthly basis, something like that, and take a bigger picture view of it. It also allows you to see how far you've come in that time, and you can almost take yourself back to the time before you could do all those things. And it does make you it does make you not take your skills for granted. You do actually have a conscious awareness of how you are developing as a professional and where that might take you. So that's really good advice. Thank you for that, Andrew. How about you, Laura? Specific challenges that you'd associate with careers in process chemistry?
Yeah, I agree with Andrew. It doesn't always behave. It doesn't always work.
I do like that point, yeah.
It can be frustrating at times, and it depends on why it doesn't work, because it can fail for technical reasons. I've got about 30 samples on my desk at the moment where I'm trying to redevelop one of our crystal spray products, and on paper they should be brilliant. However, in reality, they're just not behaving. They just don't want to work, and I can't seem to kind of nail it. Or from a commercial perspective, you can come up with a fantastic new product. For someone like me, and where we work, we've got very small volumes, so I could be looking to bring in a new raw material that is massively going to improve things, but I can, because of the minimum amount that you can order, because of the minimum order quantity, I have to buy in a certain quantity that is literally going to last us 10 years, and that isn't feasible, and that's not commercially feasible then. So there's different reasons things fail, and that can be frustrating. You always have to keep that end goal in mind, and where you want to be and where you want to get to, and try not to get disheartened and just keep going. Working in formulation, what you often find is if you had an absolute unlimited budget, if you had an unlimited time scale, you could get most things to work. You could get the most amazing products, formulas, applications out there. The reality of industry and business is that you're often restricted. Things have to be done to a certain cost, things have to perform to a certain level, and things have to be developed on time. And having to shorten your time and your cost, often you have to look for that compromise of where you're going to get the best performance you can with the constraints that you're dealing with. To anyone who works in a lab, you know, you want to get there, you want just to kind of get the best thing that you can, and it's accepting that that's not always possible. Personally, one of my biggest challenges I find where I am is that I'm very isolated. So I'm the only technical person in the company. I have very little contact with other chemists or other scientists in the outside world, and it can feel really, yeah, isolating at times, and you do feel that you've sometimes got an absolute lack of support, and things come in and you just look at them and go, well, where am I going to go for support and help? And you've got to try and battle through, and that can be really difficult. It's also though where I've really found being a member of the RSC absolutely vital, just being able to get out and talk to other people about what they do, what I do, having somewhere to go and vent those frustrations at times is really important, and definitely worth thinking about.
Thanks, Laura, and thanks for saying, you know, how your membership helps you. I am going to highlight a few particular groups that we have that might be of interest to you if you're interested in a career in process chemistry. But it's very much true to say that if you're a member of the RSC, then you are a member of a network of over 50,000 people worldwide, you know, and there is always somebody there who you can talk to, who will listen to you. You know, we're a very friendly lot. So if you are a member, make the most of your membership. And if you're not a member, then, you know, towards the end of the broadcast, I'll show you how you can join if you think that might help you. So I'm going to ask about progression routes now, and I'm going to ask Laura first. You know, what would you say are the common progression routes available in process chemistry, Laura?
Yeah, it depends on kind of what you're interested in. What I would say is some of the best advice I was given when I was starting out was to not look vertical. It's not always a vertical climb. I think in my head I was like, well, I'm going to go work in a lab and then try and make it up to senior scientist and then maybe R&D manager and go that way. But actually, when you start getting involved in the sort of companies that I've been involved in and had the privilege to be involved in, what you soon see is that there are far more roles out there and far more jobs out there than you could ever comprehend when you first start in your first lab and in your first lab role. Obviously, if the lab side's what you're interested in, then there are those R&D manager roles, and they do come up. But I wouldn't worry if that's not possible at a time, or if that's not what you really want to do, because what you do find in this role is that the experience you get and the different things you can get involved in can really diversify your skill set and can really diversify then the opportunities that you have. So I personally believe that an experience in process chemistry can open up far more opportunities than you realise. I've had examples where I've had colleagues move into the more production side. I've got colleagues who've moved into chemical sales. There's a massive area of development in regulatory right now. I'm quite fortunate in that I found a little niche where I'm developing those regulatory skills myself. It's an opportunity I would never have had in any other company. Project management's involved, and so you can, yeah, it opens up a lot. And I'd say don't just look up, look across and see where else you could go as well.
That's very sound advice, thank you. And Andrew, from your point of view, what would you say the common progression routes are?
I completely agree with Laura. It's not about always looking up, it's about looking left and right as well and seeing what's available to you. I suppose this question's answer will differ based on the organisation. We're matrix based, so that allows us kind of to have cross-disciplinary rotations and short-term assignments within different functions if necessary. Within the technical kind of lab-based roles, classical process chemistry, we have very much a structured kind of development plan if you want to stay technically within the lab, but you mightn't always be based in the lab. So we can go from research scientist 1 to 3 to senior scientist, technical lead and principal scientist. And again, I just like to highlight that they're not always lab-based. Those cross-disciplinary rotations and short-term assignments, they're really enjoyable. I'm actually doing one with biology at the moment. So you can do it with biologics, project management, quality, analytical, commercial. Don't limit yourself is really what I'm trying to get across here. And you can develop in these areas alongside your existing job. You can develop internally within your organization as well. Don't be afraid to try shape your own path that suits you, but obviously you have to engage with the systems in your organization and the goals of it as well. Whether that's internal training, external training, whether that's master's, PhD, or in my case, I use the Chartered Chemist Award and the European Chemist designation to kind of shape my path within APC. And I found it really, really useful to almost to document my progression. Maybe look for opportunities in areas or companies that you're interested in, or at least try to land roles that will give you scope to develop in the direction you want. So it might be, you mightn't get the job you want first time, but get yourself into a position where you can leverage the role that you have got to develop the key skills in a way that then would be strategic and plan your route to where you want to be, I suppose, is my kind of tip on progression.
Yeah, no, I think that's very sound advice. I mean, I don't think any of us can sit around these days and, wait for our companies or our employers to develop us. I think having some idea of what you want to achieve, where your strengths lie and how you can capitalize on that in your career is great. And also this whole idea about shaping your role yourself. There are opportunities to do that. I often say to people, it's a clever person who can take the job that the employer has got on offer and then turn it into the job that they wanted to do, and I say it tongue in cheek, but there is some truth in that. If you know what you want to achieve, you know what you're good at, there are ways that you can shape your own role. It's not all dictated to you, by external factors. So taking a bit of responsibility for your own career management and development will help you. And again, if you want to talk to us about that, if you're an RSC member, then you're more than welcome to do so. Okay, so I'm going to ask each of our guests one last question. And while they answer this question, I'd just like to invite you, if you have any questions for the panel, do type them in at this point. And then when our speakers have answered this last question each, if there's any questions that come in, I will put them to our speakers. So please feel free to start typing now. Now, the final question that I'm going to ask, and I'm going to ask this to Andrew first, is if you had one piece of advice for anyone who's contemplating starting out in process chemistry or making a career change into this sector, what would it be?
Engage with a mentor, whether that's a lecturer, a friend, or a co-worker. I was really, really fortunate to have some great mentors over the course of my development. And whether that's through college and professionally, I'd research the area you're going to go into, the company, the chemistry, and whether that's like you can get so much online nowadays, papers, patents, and you can really understand what kind of role that you're going to get yourself into. And there's an added bonus here, of course. You'll be studying for your interview if you get it. the maybe reach out on LinkedIn to find somebody in the role that you want, see what they've done and their professional journey to date. I might even stretch that kind of LinkedIn stalking to messaging the person if you have any questions. And engaging with a peer in this way is an effective way of gaining information. But I certainly would make my own look by informing yourself, and don't sit back and wait for things to happen. Kind of just shape your own path.
Thanks for that. Yeah, no, that's very sound advice. And again, if you want to talk to the RSC, you know, I'm one of a team of 4 careers advisors, and we're there to help you with just that very idea. You know, if you want to know how you can take a bit of control over this, how you can steer your future in a realistic way, then that's what we're there to help you with. You don't have to wait until you're in trouble to come and talk to us. We're happy to talk to you at any career stage. So final piece of advice from Laura then. Yeah, what piece of advice would you give to anyone who's thinking of a career in this sector?
Yeah, I've got a couple. Be open-minded. If you think it can't be done, then you're already defeated.
Right.
Whatever challenge is thrown at you, if you've got any reservations, you've got to be able to kind of go, well, it might not be easy, but how are we going to do it? Whether that be through the technical challenges you face, or even in terms of your own career. You know, if you don't think you can do it, then you, like I say, you've defeated yourself. Secondly, be open to change. What I have noticed, and through the companies I've worked through, is that the industrial world, it's always moving, it's always changing. I've been in companies where departments have been bought, sold through. I've been through a company that's been through major acquisitions and major changes, and I've been through big restructures and big reorganizations. And it always changes. It never is constant. So you've got to just go with that. One of my pet hates where I am currently is there's a bit of a habit, and it comes from working in a company with such history, is like, well, that's just the way it's always been done.
Yeah.
And it really winds me up, because just because something's been done a certain way doesn't mean it should always be like that. And having that ability to kind of challenge, to ask questions, to explore, and more often than not, when I've done that, I've found that there's usually maybe a better way of thinking things could be done. And finally, if you don't ask, you don't get. It can be as simple as that sometimes. It can be really easy to be overlooked. As someone who was quite timid at school and quite shy and waiting to be recognised for doing things really well, when you get into the industrial world, it just doesn't quite happen that way. You might get a nice pat on the back and you might get praised for something. But on the whole, if there's something you really want to do, if there's something you really want to see and get involved in, then ask to do it. I think one of the best opportunities I ever had was when I was at PZ Cousins, and they started doing a lot of community and schools work, and I'd seen it was going on, and I remember just sitting down with my manager one day going, do you know what, I'd really like to do that. I'd really like to get involved with that. And before I knew it, I was mentoring Nuffield bursary students, organising work placement opportunities for children, and running days with primary school children on site, manufacturing shower gels and things. And it was great. But had I not asked to do it, there's a whole area there and a whole skill set I would have never achieved.
Yeah, that's a very good point.
If you don't ask, you don't get.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And you've both mentioned mentoring there, which again is a very important thing in your professional development. And our team, we do run a career mentoring scheme, which I'll give you a link to a little bit later in the broadcast, so that if you're interested in having a mentor and you don't know where to get one from, you can talk to us about that. It's something that comes as part of your RSC membership. If you are an AMRSC, an MRSC or an FRSC, we're always welcoming of people who would like to either be a mentor themselves or to be mentored. Okay, thank you both very much. We have had some questions coming in now, and the first two are quite similar. They're about qualification levels to get into this kind of field. Can you have a career in process chemistry with a BSc degree in chemistry and no further study, i.e. without a master's or PhD? And the second person is saying very similar. Would a bachelor's be sufficient as an analytical chemist, or does that vary from role to role? So who'd like to answer that one?
I don't mind.
Okay, Laura.
Yeah, I don't see a BSc as a limiting factor to any sort of career in the lab. Ultimately, for me, you've still got that chemistry background, you've still got that basis. I can think of plenty of roles that I've seen. I've looked at CVs when I've taken people on, and yeah, I don't see any limitations in a BSc.
Thank you. Andrew, have you got views on that one?
Yeah, I actually have experience in terms of APC. We have teams, wide-based teams, engineering, biologics, analytics, chemistry, and in terms of the people that I work with on a day-to-day basis, we have a mixture of BEng, BSc, and really it doesn't really, once you have that initial founding in science, it actually doesn't really matter about the level. It's about the way they apply themselves.
Okay.
Yeah, it's all about being willing to take the project, embrace it, and learn on the job and run with it, I suppose.
Yeah, okay, that's very good advice. And yes, I see your point. You know, I think you've both been very clear about how transferable skills are the key to success in this kind of environment. You need the science, obviously, but maybe it's thinking more about what you bring to the job and how you do that job as well as your qualifications. It's obviously absolutely key in these kinds of roles. Okay, we've had another question. What's the job situation looking like for recent graduates during this pandemic and recession? It seems the pipeline for recent grads into lab roles has run dry. Now, I don't know what we can say about that, you know, pandemics notwithstanding, but would either of you like to answer that one?
Yeah, in Ireland, I think we're pretty lucky at the moment. The pharmaceutical industry and biopharmaceutical industry is continued to keep motoring along quite strongly. And in terms of my experience within APC, we're still hiring, regardless of pandemic.
Okay, that's good to know. Yeah, Laura, anything from your side?
Well, it's a little difficult to answer. As I say, I'm kind of one man in one tiny company. However, what I have seen and what I have been noticing is through the pandemic, there has been an absolute boom in cleaning products, hand washing products, hand sanitizers. So where there are maybe lab roles, you kind of more classical lab roles, maybe a drop there. What you might find is in those companies producing these consumer products is that there are actually opportunities opening up. As I say, a big area I'm starting to see skills needed is in the regulatory side of things, product labeling, REACH, cosmetics, directives, all these legal things that go behind a lot of the products that you make and you manufacture. And I am seeing kind of recruiters getting in touch saying, actually, we've got candidates if you need them, because they're seeing this massive increase in volume in these certain types of areas of products. Again, it's kind of that not thinking linearly and just seeing what else is out there and actually where the other opportunities may lie, and not being necessarily fazed about the technology you're working on, because that can always be learned, you know.
Okay, no, that's interesting. Thank you very much for that. There's an interesting one that's come in now. What technical and transferable skills have you gained that you didn't experience during your degrees? That's an interesting one. Who'd like to go first?
Yeah, I'll say that. Okay. Probably most of them. I think I learned a lot more through where I was working and the jobs that I do than I ever did back at university and when I was studying. Certainly through communication and how to communicate with colleagues, that self-motivation, that self-drive, actually when you've got those deadlines and those sorts of things to do, it's certainly been, I feel like the development has never stopped, and whereas maybe my degree was where I got the kind of basics and the chemistry knowledge and the scientific background, actually from the minute I went into industry, it's always been about all those other soft transferable skills instead, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does, perfect sense. Yeah, Andrew, would you agree? Have you got anything to add?
Technically, I suppose, and it's one thing I wasn't really a big expert on when I started in APC, and it's something that I picked up, is process analytical technology, or PAT, and I'd encourage anybody starting off in chemistry to Google it, because it's not something that we would have been taught when I was in college anyway, and that you can get so much more data or more trends, or you can track your starting material, your product forming in situ, so in the pot, and you don't need to run TLC or HPLC on every sample. I suppose that's the biggest technical learning I've had. Soft skills, communication, and again, like Laura said, that non-scientific communication I thought was really important, and how to communicate what might be a really, really technical, complex problem to teams who might not necessarily be technical. Time management as well. Coming from a PhD, a PhD is like, you know, it's like spilling water on the floor. It'll spread out as long as the time will allow it. Whereas within industry, you have timelines, and you must budget your work and your effort to achieve your goals within a specific time. And I suppose it's something that I've learned over my time with APC.
Yeah, thank you very much for that. Okay, thank you for everyone who sent in questions. We are coming to the end of our time now. If you have a question that hasn't been answered, or you think of a question after the broadcast, I'm now going to tell you a little bit more about our services at the RSC and how you can get in touch with us. So first of all, think about the connections. If you're already a member, think about the connections that you can make, which, you know, particularly Laura has mentioned, you know, in her role as being the only chemist in her organisation, sometimes having that network around you is really, really important. So there are lots of ways that you can connect with fellow RSC members if you're a member yourself. The Industry and Technology Division would be an obvious one for you to join if you're interested in this kind of work. You can join any of our divisions, and the Industry and Technology Division communicate effectively with their members, and you will come into contact with other people doing these kinds of jobs. We, as well as divisions, we also have smaller, more niche special interest groups, and our process chemistry and technology group, if you're interested in this kind of work, could be one for you. Great if you're already doing this kind of work, but also you don't have to be. You can join the process technology group if you're interested in this kind of role in the future, just to network, to raise your profile with other people who are in the sector. Of course, we're all confined by the COVID-19 situation at the moment, and physical meetings aren't happening, but a lot of our divisions and interest groups are running events or running workshops or ways to communicate with other members online. So it's definitely worth joining, you know, something like the Process Chemistry and Technology group if you're interested in this field of work. The management group might also be one that you're interested in if you're aspiring to that kind of career. If you'd like to go into management eventually, again, you don't have to have manager in your title to join our manager group. It's just another way to interact with other people doing that kind of role already. And if you're early on in your career, I would thoroughly recommend you joining the Early Career Network, which is open to all our early career members. It will bring you into contact with people from across the whole spectrum of jobs, really, but they will all be within sort of the first 5 years of their working lives, and will have very interesting stories to tell, you know, and it's another good way to raise your profile. And that link at the bottom of the screen there, that's a link to where you can find all of our networks, and then you can decide which ones are the most relevant for you. But, you know, it's part, you pay for this as part of your membership package, so do use it. Another thing, I've mentioned the Career and Professional Development Services. That's the team that I belong to. We have 4 of us in the team. We all do the same role, but we have various specialisms in things. You know, one of my colleagues is very good on LinkedIn and the social media kind of your professional life. Another one of my colleagues comes from an HR background, so she's very good on recruitment and how all that works. So if you've got a question for us, if this broadcast has sparked off any thoughts that you might have, then please do look at our web pages. The link is at the bottom of the screen there, or drop us an email directly and we'll be pleased to answer you. But we can provide support for members at all career stages. We're doing quite a lot of one-to-one consultations remotely at the moment by Zoom or phone or Skype. We can provide that kind of guidance on professional career planning, applications and interviews. The mentoring is a very interesting one. Both of our speakers have mentioned that today. If you go to those web pages, which are on the bottom of the screen there, you will find a link to our mentoring scheme. Do have a read through that and get in touch if that's something that you will be interested in, either as a mentor or a mentee yourself. And I would just draw to your attention, if you are an RSC member, we do have a Chemist Community Fund, which is there to help our members during the hard times. And they are being particularly active at the moment during this COVID-19 outbreak, because we do know that it's affected a lot of people, our members, negatively. So they do provide all sorts of help and support for members at all career stages. So do go to that link at the bottom of the page there to find out what they can do to help you if you've been specifically affected by the COVID-19 situation. If you're not a member of the RSC and listening to this broadcast has made you interested in joining, then do have a look, go to our website, have a look through. Another thing to say is that if you are a member, there are lots more services that you can get apart from the ones that we've been talking about today. So do have a look at our web pages and see if it will be worth your while to join. Another thing just to say before we stop is that this webinar has been recorded and we will put it on our YouTube channel. So if you want to listen to it again, or if you want to recommend it to a friend, again, if you go to our careers pages that were on the slide before, you'll find a link to the whole of this ChemCareers webinar series. So yeah, do feel free to listen again. Do feel free to get in touch with us if you need to. So really, it just remains for me to thank you all for listening today, and I hope it's been useful for you. I hope it's sparked off some thoughts. I think our two speakers have been absolutely excellent and very honest in what they've had to say. So I would like to thank them both very much. So thank you very much, Laura, for being a part of this today.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
And thank you very much, Andrew.
Thanks, Millen. It's been brilliant.
Yeah, no, it's been a really good session and I hope you've all found it helpful. So thank you all very much again. And obviously we wish you all the very best. And there's our email address at the bottom there again. So if there's another question you'd like to ask or anything else and you're a member, do get in touch with us and we will do our level best to help. So I will say goodbye for now then, and maybe we will we'll have the pleasure of hearing from you, some of you by email or at a future webinar. So goodbye for now then, and good luck.